So once again, thank you for joining us for this virtual lunch and learn session on sentencing reform, IRA, the YRA, and congressional threats. Like I said, I'm Darby Hickey, Senior Policy Counsel here from DC Justice Lab, and we're going to get started with a quick review of what we're going to go over today. We're going to talk about why we're even discussing this right now. Then we're going to get into the laws and why they're good policy. We'll go over the bills in Congress that would repeal or change them. And we'll hear from some folks who have benefited from these laws about why they are, in fact, good and are benefiting not only individuals, but also the broader community. And finally, we'll end with talking about what's next after today. So why are we talking about this right now? What's going on is that we've seen unprecedented attacks from Congress on DC's laws and autonomy over the past year. It's, as people know, because we're not a state, we are vulnerable to congressional interference as well as interference from the president and executive agencies in our local laws, even though we have limited local home rule on our own elected officials. And what we're talking about today are a couple of laws that are part of this pattern that we're seeing lately. But it's not only Congress, like I mentioned, that is threatening DC on this front. We've also had threats and attempts and threats from the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, as well as the president pushing back, saying we need to repeal these laws, calling on the council to repeal the laws, saying they're going to find ways to undermine them. And we know that presidential advisor Stephen Miller has also been one pushing Congress to move forward the bills that would repeal these laws. And so that's why it's really important for us to learn about them and learn why they are important to keep in place, as well as find out the things that we can do to continue to defend them, because these are laws that DC passed, that our residents support, that are positively impacting our communities and our neighbors, and we gotta do everything we can to keep them in place. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to dive deeper into what these laws are and why we need to keep them, as well as the threats from Congress. I'm going to turn to my colleague from the Sentencing Project, Liz Kumar. Take it away, Liz.
Thanks so much, Darby. Great to meet everyone. I'm Senior Policy Counsel at the Sentencing Project, and I work on our campaign to end life without parole. And DC's sentencing laws are some of the ones that we hold up as models for the rest of the country, which is why they're particularly urgent for us to defend. And so in terms of a roadmap of how I'll walk through them, I'm going to talk a little bit about what these two major laws are, IRA and the Youth Rehabilitation Act, what the evidence is behind them, and what's happening in Congress now. And so IRA, the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act, is DC's second look law, and it is arguably the most expansive age-based sentence review statute in the country. And so how it works is that if you commit an offense before your 25th birthday and you go to prison, you can eventually petition a judge for a new sentence after serving 15 years. And the court considers 10 factors: your rehabilitation, your conduct in prison, your role in the offense, your reentry plan, but also anything else the judge deems relevant. And then has to find that you're not a risk to the community and that the interests of justice warrant a reduction. This is not something that is guaranteed in any way. It's a process that involves a lot of scrutiny and a lot of preparation by both the individual who's seeking a new sentence and by defense counsel, and also all of the entities in the community that are preparing to support them as they come home. And this is a process in which the court is allowed to do things like change mandatory minimums. They have to issue a written decision, and victims have a right to participate. And IRA didn't begin this expansive. Originally, it only applied to people who committed offenses under 18, but it eventually applied to young adults more broadly. And that's what makes DC a national leader on emerging adult sentencing reform. As of March in 2025, a total of about 368 IRA or Second Look Amendment Act petitions had resulted in an early release in DC. And so, in practice, even though people can seek release after 15 years, typically they have been in prison far longer. 25 years is more normal. So, that 15-year threshold is more of a floor, not a ceiling. So, the people who come home under IRA are individuals who went to prison as teenagers or young adults and who are coming home as mature adults in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And so there is a bill pending in the House currently that would eliminate IRA prospectively, meaning that anyone who is sentenced for a crime after the passage of this bill repealing IRA would no longer be eligible for resentencing under it. It wouldn't impact people currently in prison, but it would impact anyone who went to prison in the future. You go to the next one, I'll talk about the YRA. And so the Youth Rehabilitation Act, similarly, is a bill that's been on DC's books for a while. It gives judges discretion to sentence teens and young adults convicted of certain offenses in a way that aligns with what we know about adolescent brain development and to potentially seal the conviction after a sentence is completed, giving people a better shot at reentry. Because what we know about youth and young adults is that they're fundamentally different. That people are more likely to take risks, that they're more prone to the influence of peers, that they're less likely to consider the future. I think if you've ever spent time with a teenager or raised a 21-year-old or been younger and made decisions, like this all resonates, that as our brains change, we are less likely to engage in certain behaviors. And so allowing more sentencing discretion when people are young is rooted in a lot of hard science and then also a lot of common sense. And when we say discretion, what we mean is that judges don't have to give a more lenient sentence. They just have the option to. It's a choice. And so the YRA gives judges more tools. It gives them the ability to give more age-appropriate sentences. And so in practice, that means that out of all the people who are eligible for one of these more age-appropriate sentences, only about half receive one. And in particular, although the YRA gives judges the ability to depart from mandatory minimums, that's extremely rare. Only about like 28 people out of 2,000 in one of the years that they did a formal study of. Laws like this, are not super rare. 6 other states also have something similar to the Youth Rehabilitation Act. These are often called youthful offender laws, even though that's not language that's like particularly non-stigmatizing. And the record sealing part of this, of course, is discretionary and not automatic. But record sealing is very good for reentry. It helps people get jobs, which ultimately makes the community safer. And so the DC Crimes Act is something that would target the YRA and reduce eligibility for it from 24 years old down to 18. So let's talk about the evidence. So with the Incarceration Reduction Amendment Act, it has been incredibly successful in terms of the rate at which people come home and recidivate in any way. So in March 2025, the U.S. Attorney's Office reported a 3% recidivism rate for IRA recipients. As someone who works at the federal level often, that's astounding. We're used to like a 45% recidivism rate in the federal system often. So that means that IRA recipients aren't just doing incredibly well in the community, they're doing astoundingly well in the community. They're coming home and making communities safer. And that's something I know you'll hear people speak more about later. In terms of the YRA, there's also been research that shows that it results in fewer rearrests because of the benefits of things like having convictions set aside to help people get jobs. And then we can also look at criminological evidence more broadly about how these policies address issues that currently exist within DC's criminal legal system, like vast racial disparities, DC's very high youth incarceration rate compared to the current national average, the ways in which mandatory minimum sentences don't typically deter crime, the extent to which criminal careers typically don't last more than 10 years, the extent to which long sentences don't generally make us safer, because what we know is that extending sentences longer doesn't make people more likely to not commit crime. All it does is cost communities more. In reality, people tend to be ready to come home after, certainly the length of time reflected by IRA in prison. And so, because of that wealth of evidence, DC is not alone when it comes to second look. They might have the most expansive second look law in the country, but there are now 15 states plus DC and the federal government that have some sort of sentence review beyond the opportunities provided to people with juvenile life without parole sentences. The American Law Institute, the American Bar Association, and the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, the Council on Criminal Justice, all recommend second look reviews. And so defending second look in DC isn't just a DC issue, it's a test case, because we don't want Congress to override this wonderful, democratically enacted, evidence-based sentencing reform that's part of a national movement. And so in terms of where we are today, we have the DC Crimes Act, which would change IRA to make it only apply to individuals under 18, or lower the age of eligibility from 24 to 18. And that's unfortunate. And that has already passed the House. And so that means that we have to block it in the Senate. It's wonderful if people can be engaged with that in ways that I know you'll hear more about later. And then in terms of IRA, there is currently a pending bill in the House that would fully repeal IRA prospectively. So it would impact everyone sentenced after the effective date of this bill. And so I hope everyone will make your voices heard. It's important for Congress to know that DC citizens really care about these issues, particularly if they themselves are not directly impacted to them. It's important for the whole community to speak out about this. And so I'll turn it back to Darby.
Thank you so much, Liz. Really appreciate that. And I've just put some resources in the chat to help people dive a little bit deeper if you like, including the letter that the Sentencing Project sent to the House about these two bills back in the fall, as well as some fact sheets that DC Justice Lab has put together. So it's important to hear about this national context to understand how these bills work, the evidence behind them, and the statistics. And it's also important to hear from people that have benefited from them and who are now giving back to the community as a result. And so what we're going to do now is turn to a couple members of Free Minds, our wonderful partners, to talk about how they've benefited from these laws. I'm going to start first with Rob Barton, who is not only a Free Minds member, but also runs More Than Our Crimes, another local partner and excellent organization. Rob, could you tell us about your experience with IRA?
Yes. So I heard Liz speak about like the factors that plays into whether or not a person is granted their average petition is granted. And so that kind of like hit hard for me because a lot of times when we talk about these type of bills or second chance acts, we all a lot of people that's trying to repeal these laws always speak about it as if it's a get out of jail free card, and it's not. Um, I myself was denied an IRA petition, my first IRA petition, because of my disciplinary history. And so I know it's not a get out of jail free card. And I also know the work that I had to do in order to the programming, the self-reflection, the breaking myself down and building myself up that I had to go through in order to show that I was ready for my freedom. Um, And so, yes, That's one thing that I wanted to highlight. Um, Also, like one of the biggest things that a person has, especially when they're doing a lot of times, is hope. A hope for a better future, a hope for a day that you will see your mother again, a hope for a day that you may be able to hug your kids and play football with them in the backyard, all those type of things. And when a person loses this hope, your or the system's ability to rehabilitate them in a lot of ways oftentimes is diminished because what's the point? Like a lot of people feel as though like I'm never going home. What can you do to me? And so I know this because I've lived this experience myself and I watch my friends do the same thing. And so I give one example that I often use. I have a guy who's been incarcerated right now probably about 34 years. And if I asked him like 10 years ago, like, bro, why won't you go down to school building and get your GED? He probably would have told me something to the extent of like, man, I don't need it. Like, what's the point? What I'm gonna do that for? But it wasn't that he didn't want his GED. And inside, I don't believe that he felt as though like intrinsically he had the tools or the educational skill to obtain his GED. So this was just a defense mechanism for him, and there was no incentive for him to do so. But when IRA came out, he went down there, he got his GED, and he also started taking college classes. And now he's gained that confidence within himself that I can do other things besides crime. I can, like be a citizen. I can be a regular citizen. And so this is a powerful incentive for change. This is a powerful incentive for, I mean, I've watched like how people behaviors or their rehabilitation change since IRA's been out. I've watched jails get safer because of these type of bills that's out, and not saying that well, it is. A person is incentivized to do good. A person is incentivized to do right. And a lot of times, even though a person may be doing it because you have a bill like IRA, like I was explaining or illustrating through my friend, you learn something in the process that gives you the ability or the confidence, or you start learning. You take these characteristics on to self. And so one of the positive impacts that it has once people come home, IRA supports or helps public safety instead of harms. And I know this because I'm watching it happen every day. As Liz alluded to, it was 368 people, I think the number that she used that came home that has been released on this bill. And only 3% has recidivated as to date. And a lot of times when people talk about these second chance laws, they usually focus on the 3%. So you'll have 100 people come home and go on and do amazing things, and then you'll have one person do something bad, and us as society will talk about the 1% instead of the other 99. But today I'm gonna talk about the other 97% of the people that's on IRA. And so for me myself, I'm the director of an organization called More Than Our Crimes, where I use storytelling, blog posts, op-eds, and all those things to try to humanize guys like myself and those that are still incarcerated for these bills of like second chances. I also help educate the guys that's incarcerated about the importance not just voting during election season, but the importance of being civically engaged, period, and keeping them connected with the issues about what's going on in their city so they'll be informed voters. And what this does is it gives people a belief or understanding that I'm still part of the community. I'm still part of my city. I can come home and be a citizen and not have to live outside the margins of society. And so for me, that was very impactful. And I know this was impactful for a lot of my friends that's already home. So today I'm also a Safe Passage Ambassador where I'm tasked with helping kids get to and from school daily safely. And that entails me to deal with uh, the police when issues come up, to deal with the principal and serve as a liaison between the kids and the school. I'm tasked with basically like checking in on them daily, speaking to them just to see how they doing, and being able to identify different things that may be going on with them and know or understand like where something is off, and then try to prevent that in any way that I can. I also am a credible message where I mentor youth not to follow in my path. And so my friends, a lot of people that came home IRA doing this type of work, they're violence interrupters, they're credible messengers, but not only that, they're citizens. They voters, they are models to their younger family members. Um, they just walking the walk. And so a lot of times those type of stories are not being highlighted. And it's not just the work in the communities that we are doing, but you got people that just working regular jobs. And all of those things are contributing to public safety. And so that's what I would have to say about IRA. IRA is a wonderful bill. I wouldn't be here talking to you today if it wasn't for IRA. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it wasn't for IRA. And society would have been harmed, not helped, by not allowing me to be here to do this type of work today.
Thanks for that, Rob. I love that last point you were making. I wonder if you would speak a little bit more on it of what this is the threat that we have right now is that IRA could be repealed by Congress. What would happen and what would be the negative effects you'd see from that?
I mean, I just spoke on the negative effects. Like, prison is, in a lot of ways, we are just warehousing people, and we wasting taxpayers' dollars doing this. And so, in that way, it harms you. It harms them because you're not getting no bang for your buck. But outside of that, it changes the way people do their time while they're incarcerated. But once these people are home, like for the most part, a lot of people are going to come home and we're going to be your neighbors. And you will want a person that has had to meet all the factors that Les just talked about, had to do the type of program or take the type of programming, really think about uh, getting deeper with their contrition and all those type of things, be contrite, understand the ripple effects of your actions, and then because in a lot of ways I feel as though, and I know this is the case for me, because of my contriteness, because of my past harms to my community, I feel more impelled today to try to correct some of the harms that I created or participated in the past. And I know a lot of our guys feel that way. And so this is why this type of bill is like very positive and is needed. And what Congress is trying to do, this is why it will harm our city gravely.
I think that's such a powerful point to make about that incentive to give back to try to repair for some of the harm that was caused and that it's such a prevailing sentiment amongst the folks that have come back under IRA, which has also been absolutely what I've experienced as well. I so appreciate all of that you shared. Was there anything else you wanted to touch on, um, Rob, before we move on
No, I
about your
think
experience with IRA or the work you're doing now?
no, I think I covered everything. Thank you, Darby. Thank you for having me. And yes, thank you.
And thank you, yeah, thank you so much for being willing to share and for all the incredible work that you're doing in the community. I think the point you made as well about what would happen if it were repealed, we potentially have all these folks that are in back. Well, we know right now we have folks in the community that are giving back, that are being from everything, from all the things that robbed up to just the regular everyday stuff of having a job and taking care of their house and their family and their friends, right? That whole gamut, that's all stuff that would not be happening if people were still locked in a cell in a federal penitentiary far away from DC. That's disrupting communities and not having them come back and help repair from some harm that happened in the past that they were part of. So I think that's really I think that's the message that we need to keep sharing, or one of them at least, about the this law. I want to turn now to Jordan, who is another Free Minds member and who has an experience with the Youth Rehabilitation Act, the YRA. Um, and want to start out with you, Jordan. Thanks again so much for being here with us and being willing to share your story. Would you tell us about your experience with the YRA?
Yes, and thank you for having me, Darby. It's a pleasure to be here. My experience with YRA was I received it uh, around sentencing. Um, I was at the age of 18, but I didn't really start to see the benefits of it until I went to apply for a job when I first started college, and I was nervous about the background check and if I would pass. Um, and then when I found out I did, that's from that point forward, I really started to see how beneficial YRA was. at least in the job aspect of it. I do know there are many different entities to it that can build the foundation of YRA. Like I know that we've advocated for mental health and housing, different things of that nature. Um, but as far as like jobs go, it's allowed me the ability to do things like work in Congress, um, and many different things, honestly, that I feel like wouldn't be possible without YRA. So I really could say that it's been beneficial to me, and it is very beneficial to other youth who may not be familiar with exactly what it can do for them.
And I believe that part of your story is that the probation sentence that you got, rather than being sentenced to prison time, enabled you to continue to get your education, including going to college. Is that right?
Yes, I expressed, and it was like it was easy to find out early on in my case that, I wanted to further my education and go to college. That was something that was dear to me as I was growing up. It was a goal of mine as early as 7 years old. And I expressed that early on in my case to my lawyers, who expressed that to my judge. And eventually that was something that proved to be impactful with my case. I was released on a condition-based basis, which allowed me to attend college and essentially not get rearrested, stay in college, and do positive things, which was not really difficult because again, college was something that I've always wanted to do. So getting a chance to really lock in and dial in on doing something that I wanted was one of the best parts for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. And I think that shows the power of the YRA to allow someone like yourself to be able to, you know, make a course correction, get over that moment of that mistake and that action that happened and mo keep it moving. But that also makes us all safer, right? When people can get access to those sort of avenues of education, of getting a job, that makes them more likely to not. Um, get caught back up in the system, right? So, is that the kind of benefit that you see from this law?
Yes, I definitely think that it shouldn't be repealed. I feel like we should build upon the foundation that was already presented in front of us. Um, allowing individuals or youth between the ages of 18 to 24 to be able to seek the employment they want, to be able to pursue housing, to be able to apply for universities without having to worry about if they'll be accepted because of their background, different things of that nature. I feel like, taking some of the benefits of YRA away from youth would just limit them and, their potential to the fullest.
Yeah, absolutely. And it seems to me also that similar to IRA, with the YRA where you don't get the set aside of your record until the end, until you've successfully completed your sentence, that also is a pretty powerful incentive to be like, if you know, keep doing things right, don't get rearrested, I'll actually be able to have this taken off my record, which is gonna give me better opportunities for jobs, for housing, etc. Did you experience that as an incentive?
Yes, I received a set aside after probation. I was eligible for early termination, and I was granted that by my judge. And from that point forward, I saw the benefits of my record being set aside as well. I haven't recidivized at all, but just the opportunities that I've been able to take advantage of has really proved that YRA is effective. And we should continue to move forward with, building this foundation. Again, um, I don't believe that I would have even been allowed to attend a university without YRA or do things like intern in Congress, which I've been doing for the last 8 months or so. These are things that um, give you firsthand experiences prior to adulthood, and I feel like um, hindering YRA and taking it away completely would just deprive youth of a lot of the chances or opportunities that are presented.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for I was going to ask you that. What are you up to now? Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible that you're interning in Congress. Congratulations. What a story. I love that.
Thank you.
Is there I know you spoke a little bit about some of the ways that we could build upon the IRA, right? So right now Congress wants to well, not entirely repeal it, but really cut it back so that far few people would qualify for it. Um, what do you think we should be doing instead? What are the kinds of changes that we actually need to see that Congress could do or that the local DC government could do to make the YRA even more effective or make young folks that have gotten caught up in the system be more successful?
Well, I have a lot to say about
All
that.
right, let's hear it.
But again, first, I believe mental health services is extremely important, especially for youth. Coming from the communities we come from, we go through a lot of trauma, PTSD, and then going through the carceral stage just heightens that trauma. So I feel like mental health services is necessary post-release. That's first and foremost. And then job and housing placement, really putting youth in positions to level up in work environments, putting them in housing environments that aren't really um, within their neighborhood's range. And I feel like you'll really start to see the benefits of, the legislation in front of us. I feel like only um, a handful of those things are offered or really shown or given to youth. Again, I feel like um, I personally haven't experienced the mental health part or housing part of YRA, even though I know that um, I believe that it was in the language of previous bills before. So definitely should start with mental health, and then from there, um, the youth should maybe have a caseworker or somebody like in a mentor role that can really like guide them through the process of doing things like building their credit and just different things that comes with being an adult that they may not be able to learn at the moment. So
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Yeah, the law, so to be clear, the Youth Rehabilitation Act was passed back in the 80s, and it was when we had a very different system set up. We had a local prison that we ran, and we're supposed to be offering services there to people sentenced under it. I don't know how well those services were ever offered, but certainly once everybody got moved to the BOP, that stopped happening. And then we also know that even for folks that are on probation, they're not getting the services that the law kind of promises that they should get. And that even when it was updated back in 2018, I believe it was, there was again a promise of more services. There was again a promise of a office of yeah, emerging young adults targeting that kind of 18 to 24 age. And that promise has still not been realized. So there's still plenty that could be due to improve our public safety by strengthening the YRA, but limiting its who can apply for it and who can get it is definitely not the way to go. Thank you so much, Jordan, for sharing your story with us, for being such a incredible story, really, of the success of this law and of your own success. It's clear that you've been highly motivated to make some changes, and congrats on all that great work. Really appreciate you being here and joining with us.
thank you for having me.
What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about what's next and where we go from here. And then we're actually running a little ahead of time, so we may have some time for a few questions. Um, so as Liz mentioned, um, these bills are both in the House. There's been a vote in the House on the YRA law, or the rewrite of YRA. That's called HR 4922. So the next action likely there is in the Senate. Um, the law to repeal IRA in the House has been voted out of committee, but hasn't had a full House vote yet. So that's where the next action would be there, would be once they bring it up for a vote for the full House. In the Senate, these laws are probably not going to move on their own, although things, who knows, but that could happen, but that's generally the consensus. They could be added to another bill, they could be put all together into one bill. And so we're closely monitoring that, and we will absolutely advise you all on what's going on with it. Right now, there's no imminent action that we know of, but unfortunately, as I'll talk a little bit more about later, that comes very last minute, the notice of when there will be votes. So what can you do? What's up next is look out for our follow-up email. We'll send some of the materials that we've shared in the chat, as well as some other materials. You could attend our next Lunch and Learn event, which is on May 29th. That's going to be focused on record sealing and expungement. And I'll actually put a link to that. Oh, actually, first let me share this with you. This is a great resource of some stories from Free Minds members about the IRA. And here's the registration link for that next Lunch and Learn, where we'll be talking about our record relief laws, which are the next, which are another, unfortunately, another law that's been targeted by Congress. And then you can always learn more about these issues in the DC Justice Lab library. There's a link here. Of course, we'll send that along um, when we share this all out with you. Next steps, what we would love for you all to do, in addition to staying tuned and to reviewing those materials, is share this info with your friends, with your colleagues, with your family members, especially or not especially, including those that are in other places that have voting members of Congress, unlike those of us in DC. Watch out for our calls to action when we hear that something's happening in Congress on either of these bills. We will absolutely be putting the word out, and so will our allies like Free Minds, like the Sentencing Project, like More Than Our Crimes. So keep an eye out for that make sure you're on our email list, make sure you're following social media. Like I mentioned, we're not sure of the timing, and the votes get scheduled with very little notice. But unfortunately, there are many, many attacks on DC right now, and there's lots of opportunities to get involved. So we really encourage you, in addition to kind of watching and waiting on these two pieces, is find a way to get involved. That's a great antidote to kind of some of the challenges of this moment we're in and these unprecedented attacks on DC's autonomy. So really encourage you to do that. I want to see if, actually, I neglected to invite our CEO, Clinique Chapman, to say welcoming remarks at the top. I wanted to see, Clinique, if you have a moment and wanted to just share any thoughts um, with with the folks here briefly before we close out.
No, sure, no problem. Thanks, Darby. And thank you everyone for joining us. Seeing, how many folks we have on just really does show us the interest in this topic, and really learning how you can engage and how you can advocate. And so, thank you for Darby for organizing, coordinating these lunch and learns, as well as our guests from Sentencing Project and Free Minds. I hope that you all see that we can't make real change in isolation. And so really partnering with other organizations is what we see as a great way to really fight what is happening in the city. And so thank you to our partner orgs. And we really do value the research and just the voices of those who are most impacted in everything that we do. And all roads are leading to, YRA and IRA being very critical pieces of contributing to DC safety. And so we really do, hope that you all will utilize what you've learned today and put it in action. So thank you all so much for your time, and I'll pass it back to Darby.
Thanks, Clinique. Yeah, we've got 2 minutes here, so if anyone has a question, we could go ahead and take that real quickly. We're also going to share all our, oh, here's the list of all the resources we'll be sharing, and then we'll share all our contact information, so you can feel free to follow up with us. But did anyone have a question before we wrap it up? And that's fine if the answer is no. Yes, Heather, go ahead.
Hi, and thanks, Darby, and so much to you and all the presenters for such a powerful panel today. I just wanted to uplift what I put in the chat about a Maryland Second Look Coalition community gathering and event we're hosting tomorrow. All are welcome, and very much on theme to today's conversation, like really being in coalition, especially across the DMV in protecting all of these related policies and really being in that together. So if you want to join members of the Maryland Coalition doing this work, we'd love to have you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Heather. And we so appreciate that cross-border solidarity and support. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Before we go, I have one last request for you, which is if you would take a moment to briefly fill out our survey to give us feedback to help us, continue to improve these and improve our events for the future. It's very short, and I've just put the link there in the chat. And with that, yes, invite if a question occurs to you later on, no problem. Shoot us an email. We're happy to answer. Like I said, look out for that email coming from us with the slides with all these resources. And please share this information and look out for when it's time to take action. With that, I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of your Friday and a great weekend. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody.